you want to. Yep.
Thank you, Donna. And yes, this is a good opportunity to recognize the hard work to get here and then kind of a kickoff for the next few days. Before we do that, you have with you here on the panel some experts and people who have a lot of insight into where things are going. We'd like to open it up for questions. You have microphones coming around here. Just raise your hand and they'll bring a microphone to you. Got one over here, one there.
And keep in mind, we're a little blind up here. We actually can't see you. So raise your hand to someone out there.
Okay. Question for Scott. You mentioned this disaster assistance improvement program, and you showed as an example a way to identify a person in the database once and only once so that all these agencies can see them.
Right.
But as the victim goes to the different agencies for aid, how do you re-register them or re-authenticate that that's in fact the person?
The way the disaster assistance improvement program works is we make sure that when we collect disaster survivors' information now, we add additional questions, keeping the other agencies in mind. And so what we do is then through the application, the various algorithms, based on how you answer the questions, it will then disseminate the basic disaster information plus the new specific questions to that recipient agency. Now, since you've given me a brief minute to speak about it, what has been a challenge up to this point, I think someone said it earlier, which I thought was very insightful. Even with an executive order in our back pocket from the President of the United States, we've had trouble getting these recipient organizations fully engaged. And again, it's a matter of funding, their infrastructure. One of the organizations was like, service-oriented architecture, NEAM, what are you talking about? Send me a spreadsheet. So we have those challenges. But to answer your base question is we now are required federally to take additional information, things that we'll send the Department of Education, to Social Security Administration, Small Business Administration, HUD, so that we can make sure and make the experience a lot better for the disaster survivors.
Okay, another question over here.
I was wondering, would it be safe to say that the sum of all emergency messages should be logically equivalent to the enterprise architecture, at least when they're both aligned with each other?
Who wants to take that?
I would say yes, definitely.
Thank you.
I think that's why we're co-sharing the EM domain management responsibilities. It makes sense.
Let me jump in on that too. Another opportunity to inject my belief system here. So the other thing that we're doing that we just started to at NEAM 2.1 is we're taking those concepts that are generated by the work done by the likes of you through the EDXL model, and we are infusing them into the emergency management domain as a whole. Now, these are complementary. These are higher level conceptual data elements that are based on EDXL. The best example I can give you is in hospital availability, there's a bed capacity data element. And that specifically is for HAVE, which is hospital availability is what's available in a hospital inside the doors of a hospital, okay? But bed capacity could be used for a lot of other purposes. The number of beds in a quarantine in an H1N1 event, or the number of beds in a dirty bomb incident for radiological testing or support. So we are, sort of like what you're saying, taking a lot of the work that's done in EDXL and we're taking it up and making it part of the emergency management domain data structure. Not to replace that particular HAVE element, just to take that generic concept and raise it up.
Don, do you have a comment from the enterprise data management perspective?
Oh, I think it was answered. Yes.
Okay. That's important. Another question over here then.
Just a follow-on question on the enterprise architecture scheme. I mean, even in this scope of NEEM, enterprise architecture still can be viewed as siloed. So, I mean, eventually, should it roll out to more of a federated architecture and eventually a global architecture?
Have you been talking to Shminder, Paul? So you're right. In each agency, even if we were to divide our missions up the same way, you would then have a DHS segment architecture for screening. You might have a segment architecture for screening at DOD, and you might have another one. So what you'll see at the federal level is, especially in this latest review of enterprise architecture, is the chief architect wanting us to join those like architectures and ensure that we have a cross-federal segment architecture for these similar issues. Out of the White House now, we are talking about in the Information Sharing and Access IPC for Standards and Architecture. One of the 7 goals this White House subcommittee is taking on is integrating the screening architecture across the 5 federal agencies as part of the national security. So it's the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the Department of State, and the Director for National Intelligence. So that work is already happening, and you'll see a lot more of that work probably in the FY 10-11 timeframe.
Okay. Any other question? We have a gentleman over here.
To follow on about my earlier thing of outreach, let me be more specific. You said you started a domain. Now, in the case of your big list, you listed maritime as one of the domains, which is part of transportation, which would imply that's a separate interest group from other people in transportation. So what is required to establish a domain? Is there a list of requirements of here's what you have to do, and where will we get that?
No easy questions here, huh? You wait all the way to the end between me and my martini.
No, I know that there has been some outreach. There, for example, I know there were presentations on NEEM at the Traffic Records Forum, where they've adopted the MUX standards and things of that sort into the NEEM process. So there's outreach of some sort ongoing.
There's absolutely outreach. And so NEEM is a model. I skipped this part of my future of NEEM because I wanted you to come to my Thursday morning session. But NEEM as a model has growth in a couple of areas. And new domains pop out of some of that growth. Some of it is bottoms up, right? The implementers are hammering us for new content. And sometimes it's top down. But in either way, what's first required is a community and a governance structure that is inclusive of the government conversation. Federal, state, local, tribal. So you can't just come in and say, hey, I want some stuff in NEEM, and I'm one person, and I want some stuff in NEEM. So that's nice, but that's not how we run the program. So you have to have a governance group who is willing to be accountable and responsible, a governance group who's willing to be inclusive, and a governance group who's willing to be a good NEEM citizen. And before you put your content in the model, you pre-harmonize. All of those are requirements. The other requirements are, because it's a small program, we're controlling the growth of the model. The Executive Steering Council has picked a few areas for that controlled growth. The Department of Transportation, or transportation issues as it relates to state and local information sharing, is an area that the Executive Steering Council has told us is an interesting top-down strategy, as well as some growth in environment. But the biggest growth areas from last year you will see in the model, which are the seaborne part, the radiological and nuclear detection, added probably 400 properties or so into the NEEM model. And maritime came out of a top-down discussion related to sharing across DOD, DHS, DNI, and the maritime environment. And so the Department of the Navy and the Coast Guard were already doing it. They had a model called MEME. They stole some EAM, put an M in front of it. They started, conversely enough, by taking 65% of what they had in their model out of NEEM and rebranding it, creating more, and then they said, hey, we have a MEME. And it just didn't seem to make sense. And so for the agencies, across that across that governance structure, said, let's bring that back in. Let's save some money. Let's have a unified approach to that. So there's top down, there's bottom up, and there's got to be a coalition, some executive sponsorship, a community that says we're ready to add content, we're ready to be good NEEM citizens, in order to move forward with you as a program. Is that clear? Is mud? Got it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let me thank you, my panel here, for participating. We appreciate your time and efforts, and turn it back over to Justin here.
Thank you, Patrick, Scott, Dennis, and Donna, as always. Two real quick things, and then we can get to Donna's Martini. First and foremost, thank you all for your attention. Thank you all for coming here today. This is obviously very important to all of us, and we look forward to spending the next 3 days with you and imparting any additional information that we can, and also gathering information back from you as well. So with that, I hope this has provided you with a level set by which we can move forward over the next 3 days. And two quick housekeeping things. One, you'll see white suggestion boxes out front. Those boxes are going to be any questions you put in there. We're going to go through them and get them and use them as the basis for the town hall meeting on Friday. The town hall meeting on Friday, Van Hitch is going to be here. He's going to introduce Vivek Kundra. Then after that, it's a rare opportunity because you're going to have Vivek, you're going to have Krishindra Paul from OMB, Van from DOJ, Richard from DHS, Global, Bob Bomer, and Donna, all together on one panel to take just Q&A. So we're not doing structured presentations, but we're just going to do Q&A. So it'll be an interesting opportunity to get a fairly substantial view across multiple agencies and the federal government from the new administration's perspective. So make sure stay tuned for Friday. Make sure you get your questions into those boxes so we can get them answered for you. And with that, Donna?
If you want to throw a question in the box for the PMO in general, maybe not for the town hall, please do. If you're shy, maybe I'm not so approachable, you can approach Justin. He's a lot nicer than I am. But the suggestion box really is your way of just, if you have a thought during a session, you don't want to lose it, and you didn't get a chance to talk to anyone, just throw it in the suggestion box.
And we'll get them in. Put your contact information. We'll get your response back. All right. With that, I believe the bar.
They must be NEEM conformant. Oh.
But they're expandable. So, with that, I believe the bar is open. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow morning.